We begin in Venezuela, where thousands of people took to the streets in a number of cities across the country in support of peace and to urge foreign intervention in the country. Caracas residents marched towards the Miraflores Palace to show support for the government led by President Nicolas Maduro. These mobilizations follow weeks of attacks against the country's electrical grid. Demonstrators say that they stand against the imperialist policies of the United States and are prepared to defend their homeland.
People here are committed to the revolution. We are willing to defend our country. We want the US and their imperialist policies to get their boots and hands out of Venezuela. Our country is tired of you, and here we are, ready to defend our country.
I am part of a Bolivarian militia, and we are ready to defend our revolution, to defend our sovereign and free country. That is how we want Venezuela to remain. We want everyone to know that we are people who defend peace, but that we are also ready to defend our country.
This mobilization is the biggest gesture to show the world our determination to win, so that the revolution can be strengthened, as well as our sovereignty. The drums for peace are playing to reject all invasion into our country. Music and drums make people come together for peace.
I'm here because Nicolás Maduro has been the only president that has protected sexual diversity, and not just with laws. I, as a trans woman, am very proud to be part of the Socialist Party in Venezuela because it has given legitimacy to the LGBTQ community.
The Venezuelan opposition also gathered en masse to march in the east of Caracas. Opposition figure Juan Guaido called for this rally known as Operation Freedom, with the support of the country's far right and the United States government. This demonstration headed towards the headquarters of the National Electoral Corporation. Our correspondent in Caracas, Madeline Garcia, was at the Chavista March.
I'm in the middle of the mobilization, which is now close to the palace. People from different parts of the capital have come here. They are here in the streets today to let the world know that they exist and that they want peace. They say they are marching to support President Nicolas Maduro. They elected him on the 20th of May 2017 and don't want more violence. Some demonstrators told us that they want peace and that they wanted to tell the opposition that all Venezuelans have a place in the country. This is the atmosphere in Caracas at this time.
And Madeline Garcia also caught up with the president of Venezuela's state oil company during the anti-imperialist rally. He spoke about the recent U.S. sanctions, which target ships belonging to the oil company.
Those new unilateral sanctions from the US are offensive. They can try to sanction our fleet, planes and oil production, but they will not defeat the people. They will not overthrow PDVSA or the Bolivarian Revolution. We will continue to work. Right now we are surrounded by our workers, and we will continue to send the same message. We want peace. We are working toward peace. We will continue taking to the streets to defend our dignity and the future of our nation.
At the end of the rally, President Maduro addressed the crowd, providing reassurance that the government plans to fully restore the country's electrical system is being implemented. This after recent terrorist attacks left Venezuela in the dark for a stretch of days in the month of March.
Right now, we are carrying out a 30-day plan to fix all the serious damage done to our electrical system. They sabotaged and destroyed equipment. So we had to work in 3 areas: cleaning all the electrical software from viruses, protecting transmission system from physical attacks, and finally, rebuilding all the equipment they destroyed. But I can tell you that we are on our way, and within 30 days, we will completely stabilize all of our electrical system.
President Maduro also commented on the economic sanctions being imposed on the country. He says that all people, including the opposition, have been affected by them.
The U.S. sanctions are an attack against people's living conditions and Venezuela's right to economic development. This is a form of aggression against all Venezuelans. People from the opposition, I tell you, don't think this is not affecting you. It does affect you. A group of businessmen who are not supporters of the government told me a short while ago that the worst thing that happened to this country was the economic sanctions that impact not only the working class, but businessmen as well.
Our correspondent Alejandro Kirk brings us more on those marches.
Hello. Opposition and government forces took to the streets today again in Caracas. The government launched Operation Defense of Freedom, opposing the opposition, the right-wing Operation Freedom, which was supposed once again to overwhelm the military security forces and turn over not just military but also Chavista supporters who they expected to change their minds because of their strength. It didn't work like it didn't work many times before. Change in one day seems to be impossible. Deputy and self-proclaimed President Juan Guaidó convoked this Operation Freedom, expecting millions of people on the streets of Venezuela. It didn't work either, and all he could say at the demonstration was more mobilization, more marches, more organization, but less foreign intervention and less miraculous changes in the political situation. So the people went off, they went home rather frustrated. They were also very angry with those who didn't attend, so the demonstration wasn't that huge as they expected. On the other side, in the government side, massively people went to the streets once again, tired as they are after weeks of electric sabotages and problems with water supply and food supplies and transportation. But anyway, they attended the call by the government to support and also observe how the president received from the National Constituency Assembly the new National Development Plan for the next 5 years, in which the current economic and social crisis will be, that is at least what the plan says, reversed, and the revolution will take another turn for the future. Like I said, it was massive. At the time I'm speaking, the president is still speaking to his people, and for the time being it seems that the revolution got some breath to plan, breath to retake the government plans and works, and the execution of the measures that they are taking to overcome the crisis, the economic crisis. But at the same time, we have heard of new sanctions by the U.S. It seems that the U.S. intervention is not anymore on the table, but the economic and the blockade continues. That's a prospect for the time being.
That was Alejandro Kirk reporting in Venezuela. The co-president of the Russia-Venezuela Intergovernmental Commission has said that cooperation is key to reducing international tensions and promoting development in Venezuela.
I believe that continuing with the bilateral cooperation, including cooperation in the new and old technological areas, is one of the key elements to achieve a stable development in Venezuela. Also, it is a key to reduce tensions in the socio-economical sphere. We believe that this is the only way that the Venezuelan foreign partners should facilitate a path so the country go back to sustainable and prosperous line, and not using the language of threats, sanctions, and ultimatums.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Afro-descendant communities said that the agreement was reached with the goal of getting President Ivan Duque to visit the area and continue with the negotiations. The communities have been protesting for more than 27 days as they demand that the government fulfill several agreements related to their lands and rights. And via social media, Colombian President Ivan Duque tweeted about the agreement, which had been reached with the leaders of the Social Minga. He said that the accord was a responsible one, and he announced that those negatively affected by the protests will be compensated. The police have heavily repressed protesters, leaving several people injured and at least 11 dead.
Daily protests, many of our indigenous, campesino, and Afro-descendant people have been injured. Now, we want the government to give us what they agreed to, because they are treating us like terrorists. We want them to know that we are still here. The Guard is still here. The Mingueros are still here to demand that we receive what we are owed. We want the government to know that people have died during these protests, and we continue to fight for them, for people like Deiner Seferino Yunda Camayo, who was killed, and for our dignity. And we will not leave until the negotiations are complete.
Now to Brazil, where this Sunday marks 1 year since the jailing of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Mobilizations will be held throughout the country. Lula, his defense team, and supporters maintain his innocence 1 year on, saying that there is no evidence and that there was no crime, and that his imprisonment is legally unjustifiable. The former president has been denied the right to provide interviews with media around the world and was denied the right to attend the funeral of his brother. But more importantly, to supporters of Brazil's Workers' Party, he was denied the right to run in the 2018 presidential elections against now President Jair Bolsonaro, despite Lula's clear lead in all of the polls. In Canada, 15,000 educators in the country's largest province, Ontario, are rallying against government's decision to cut education funding in the province. The protesters marched to the Ontario Legislative Building at Queen's Park in the provincial capital. Demonstrators are rejecting changes in education policy, including post-secondary education, proposed by the Conservative government, which is led by the right-wing Premier Doug Ford. A number of major unions and students attended the march.
There is no way that increasing that average from 22 to 28 is going to help increase student success. If anything, as a teacher, I'm going to be more strained and finding it more challenging to be able to help any of my students who are currently struggling. I have kids who struggle to come to class, I have kids who struggle with the concepts, and I'm consistently reaching out with parents, talking to them, trying to support those students. There's no way that increasing those kids in those classes are going to help us teachers do a better job of servicing the kids that are in need. Absolutely not.
Cuts by the Ontario government, we're joined now by Laura McCoy. Laura is an elementary school teacher in Toronto. Thanks for joining us, Laura.
You're welcome.
Can you give us a bit of background on the cuts that are being threatened by the Ontario government?
Sure. So the Ford government, a provincial Conservative government, has made or threatened to make many cuts to public education. The biggest one is just been announced about a week ago, cutting $1.4 billion from education. And this is largely going to be achieved by cutting high school teachers and teachers in grades 4 to 8 and increasing class sizes. So the grades 4 to 8 class sizes will on average increase by one student, but what that means, of course, is no class caps. So the classes will be much larger to compensate for the smaller specialized classes. In high school, they're increasing class sizes by from 22 up to 28 students per class, and that will result in the elimination of thousands of teachers from high schools across Ontario and make the classes in the 30s and possibly up to 40 students per class. It will also eliminate many of the specialized programs which run with smaller classes, so that you might eliminate, for example, the arts programming, the music, even the tech programs in the high schools.
And one of the first education changes was the attack on the new sex education curriculum. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, that was one of the really early ones. We had a recently updated sex and health curriculum, which we fought long and hard for, which included things like gender identity and the issue of consent in relationships. The Ford government was definitely pandering to a conservative base and eliminated that curriculum and said that teachers should go back to teaching the earlier curriculum, which was from from 1998, so quite a long time ago, obviously, and didn't mention issues of consent or gender identity or healthy sexuality in any really big way. So there was a really big outcry against that, and teachers organized and the high school students organized really strongly against that, and in fact had a walkout in the fall in protest against that move.
And I know that you and many of your colleagues participated in today's rally. What are some of the demands of education workers today?
Yeah, it was a huge rally. It was really exciting. Certainly what we're looking for is for the Ford government to reverse the cuts and to put money back into education. So we shouldn't be going in the direction of larger classes. We know that students learn better in smaller classes. That has been proven by a lot of research. So we need to go in the other direction, making class sizes smaller so students can have the relationship with the teacher and get the individual attention that they need. There's other cuts that have come along too. For example, one of them was to the autism funding. The parents in the autism organizations have rallied, and we're certainly at the rally today, fighting against the cuts to the funding for their programs. So that's another demand, is to put money back into the autism funding. And also to change the curriculum that they've decimated, so the sexual health curriculum. They also eliminated some of the curriculum writing that was meant to be done on Indigenous education, and so we would like them to reverse that decision as well, so that we have the necessary curriculum to teach those subjects.
Thank you so much, Laura. We had been speaking to Laura McCoy, an elementary school teacher in Toronto who participated in today's march and rally at the Ontario Provincial Legislature against pending education austerity by the Conservative government. South Africa's largest gold mining firm, Sibanye Gold, have vowed to continue with their 5-month-long strike until their demands are met. The workers are demanding a $120 salary increase, among other things. However, the mine said it's unable to provide any increase higher than $70. The strike began in mid-November last year, and since then, the workers' union and management have failed to end the deadlock. Thousands of demonstrators in Sudan have taken part in what seems to be the largest protest against President Omar al-Bashir. The protests, which sparked last December, are calling on the president to step down. In Khartoum town, demonstrators reached the army headquarters for the first time. The presidential compound is nearby. Security forces were seen using tear gas as they tried to disperse protesters. Several arrests were also made. Al-Bashir has been in power for 30 years. Renewed fighting near the Libyan capital, Tripoli, has erupted between pro-government forces and rebel fighters from the east of the country. According to reports, rebel forces loyal to Libyan military officer Khalifa Haftar are near the outskirts of Tripoli. The United Nations Libya envoy remains adamant that a conference on possible new elections will commence as planned. Libya has been plagued by violence, slave camps, and political instability since the killing of revolutionary leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. It's been 25 years since a dark cloud passed over Rwanda, a horrific genocide which saw the killing of over 800,000 people. We take a look in this next report.
It's said that the genocide was a systematic campaign that the Hutu ethnic majority aimed at wiping out each and every member of the minority Tutsi group. But what really triggered this was the death of the Rwandan president, Juvenal Habyarimana. On April 6, 1994, the president's plane was shot down by a missile of unknown origin, and the genocide began on April 7th. It went on for around 100 days. Ordinary Rwandans became killers and neighbours, enemies. Yet today, a handful of those victims and perpetrators live side by side in a small community known as the Reconciliation Village.
It wasn't easy because after the war ended, I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone, share anything, drink together, and so on because of what had happened. But slowly, as we continued to talk to others, in prayers together, we managed to forgive each other.
It was shameful, I won't lie. Very shameful to face someone I wronged, that I used to share everything with. You see, Bosco was my classmate. The fact that I was among those who killed his father, that's huge. I had nothing to reproach him for, so it was hard for us to reconcile.
However, in 2011, President Paul Kagame said he hoped what transpired in 1994 would put aside past differences and build a closer relationship in the future.
I don't think it does any good for anyone, for us to keep lost in that difficult past, but to find ways we can move forward. I think for Rwanda, that's how we have been approaching our different situations, our different challenges. We keep looking forward, we keep moving forward. We don't want to be held back by what has happened in the past.
The former French President Nicolas Sarkozy also acknowledged that France made mistakes by not helping to put an end to the terrible killing and raping of women, among other crimes.
What happened here has left an indelible mark, absolutely indelible. What happened here is unacceptable, and what happened here compels the international community, including France, to reflect on the mistakes that stopped it from preventing and halting this abominable crime. I've said some things, but I can recapitulate. There were serious errors of judgment, a kind of blindness we didn't see the genocidal dimension of the government, of the president who was assassinated, errors with Operation Turquoise, which was entered into too little and too late.
Almost 90 days after the genocide began, the Tutsi group Rwandan Patriotic Front, led by Paul Kagame, defeated the government forces and he became the leader. Though the RPF stopped the genocide from reaching its completion, the process of reconciliation is ongoing.
Over the last 25 years, Rwanda's biggest challenge has been reconstructing a national unity. Because when a genocide has been committed, a genocide is the extermination of one category, one element of the population, and in this case, it is the Tutsi. So this act, this deadly act, profoundly broke the country's unity. The reconciliation has made great leaps. Firstly, because the country has been completely pacified and the population trusts the authorities and the people who govern. So that is an important step. And now the population is asking for just one thing, and that is to get on the path to progress.
Today, Kagame still runs Rwanda and has officially been president since 2000. Rwanda has transformed. The country's life expectancy has doubled in the past decade, and child mortality and HIV rates have plummeted. The economy has grown by a rate as high as 8% since 2008, making it by one assessment the most desirable African country to invest in and a thriving tourist destination.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Firefighters, multiple fire trucks, and ambulances were dispatched to the scene to contain the inferno. Yellow vest protesters have hit the streets of France for a consecutive 21 weeks, demanding social and economic justice and the ousting of President Emmanuel Macron. The movement remains strong, even though it's been faced with heavy police repression, which has resulted in grave injuries and even death.
You have to stop thinking that the people who are here are doing this for pleasure. It's not for pleasure, because otherwise we'd be home a long time ago, as many have done. So no, it's not our routine.
We work together and we have nothing left. We cannot go out anymore. We cannot go on vacation anymore. You cannot tighten your belt anymore. So that's what makes us angry.
A group of supporters of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange have rallied in front of the Ecuadorian embassy in London to support him. Armed with banners and flags, protesters chanted for Assange's freedom as well as freedom of speech. On Friday, WikiLeaks said Assange was about to be expelled from the embassy. However, the Ecuadorian government has denied these claims. Assange has been holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London since 2012 after he sought refuge there to avoid arrest and potential extradition to the United States for publishing thousands of classified military and diplomatic cables on the website. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at tellusarenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Our English, I'm Camille Scanti. Thanks for watching.